Our so-called conservative Board of Regents did nothing, and it's a disgrace. Wayne Clough, the president of Georgia Tech, ought to be removed. And this is something, again, you never read in the mainstream media. What a sad commentary right here, not far from us. Two kids trying to get an education. They just happen to be college Republicans. One a Jew, one a Christian. Can't have their rights at Georgia Tech. And yet, with taxpayer dollars, Georgia Tech hosts an Islamic Awareness Week. That is the evil of multiculturalism. And I'd like to maybe end on those remarks, because this is what all too many of our students are learning in schools, that all cultures are equal. That's a lie. All cultures are not equal, and we need to be proclaiming that, and I think we know why. Let's just run down the list of current events that we do read and see on TV. Look at the rape victim over in the Arab world that is now the subject. You know, it's upsetting to even talk about it. The fact that a rape victim is now thrown in jail, and that women have absolutely no rights under Islamic Sharia law. The fact that a teacher in the Sudan, second grade class, asked her class to name their teddy bear. The most popular name in class, of course, is Muhammad. One of the most popular boys in class is Muhammad. They named the teddy bear Muhammad, and the radical Islamists now yesterday demonstrating for her death for so-called blaspheming the Prophet. You know, radical Islam has no compatibility at all with our Western values of tolerance, of pluralism, of democratic elections. Of course we have a country, as we all know, where we had over 200 years of change through the ballot and not the bullet. They don't get that in radical Islam, and there's far too little condemnation by moderate or peaceful Muslims of what's happening in this world. I mean, again, sad commentary. A woman in Saudi Arabia can't even drive a car without getting the permission of the eldest male. In many areas where Muslims dominate, they have Sharia law, which has nothing in common with our Western values, a trial by a jury of our peers. It's the stoning of people who are adulterers or homosexuals or who blaspheme the Prophet. It's a sick, medieval, warped sect of Islam that is very powerful and is rising in this world. In fact, just last week in the Sudan, the government of Sudan is controlled by radical Islamists. And they've actually called for a holy war against the Christians who are predominantly black in the southern part of Sudan. And blacks are being murdered, and the liberals, who usually talk about compassion for minorities, do and say nothing. It's basically conservative Republicans and a few intellectually honest liberals who are actually pointing out that, hey, Christians are being murdered, blacks are being murdered by an Islamic government, and their militias called the Janjaweed militia. You don't see that on CNN very much, and you don't see that in the mainstream media. Again, a huge threat from radical Islam, funded all too often by so-called American foundations. And the last footnote, some of you have heard me say this in my remarks too. I have an FBI agent friend right here in Atlanta, and he tells me, Phil, you won't believe some of the dangerous characters who travel back and forth between the mosque here and even in Athens, Georgia. The radicals have taken over the mosque. Moderate Muslims are being pushed out of leadership. And even 2 weeks ago in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, there was an op-ed piece by some Muslim. She was a Christian who had turned Muslim and visited a mosque in Atlanta. And even she was a liberal, but even she was offended by the sermon she had heard in the mosque in Atlanta that attacked the West and insulted America and insulted Christians. Again, they do not want to live in peace and harmony or enjoy elections with the values that we hold. Multiculturalism is extremely dangerous. We have to fight it in our schools, and all too many of our own Republican lawmakers don't want to see what's happening on our campuses. So when you talk to your state legislators, ask them what they're doing with regard to funding our higher education. Ask some of our Board of Regents what's going on in some of our schools, because our own Republican kids, some of the brightest young men and women you want to meet, you ought to hear the stories from some of the college Republicans on the mind control and the thought control. I spoke at Emory University just this last Thursday night. I had to have 6 policemen there with me because the speaker the month before wasn't allowed to speak. He was hooted off by hardcore leftists, both in the school and in the surrounding community there. It's like a Marxist enclave down there in South DeKalb County. I'm not kidding. And that's the first time I ever had to have 6 police officers escort me to just give you remarks that I'm giving you right here now in relative peace and tranquility. So that's what's happening. That's what's happening out there. Be fortunate you live in an area where you can at least have speakers speak freely. Isn't that incredible? Isn't it incredible we're even discussing that? Finally, some reflections on our party and where we're going. And I think probably all of us are waiting for January 14th, when there's going to be some very interesting bills being drawn by our Republican leaders. And what's very interesting is to be watching Speaker Glenn Richardson's tax plan. For those of you that have been following this, just very quickly, he at first proposed that we outlaw all property taxes in the state of Georgia. There never was really a bill, and so it's been kind of a rolling debate. It's been a good debate. It's been a debate the Democrats never allowed us to have, let me add. So the debate has now evolved until today, where we see the plan is modified, whereby they are now targeting the elimination of the school tax. And I know up in Fulton County, that's about 60% of the tax bill, probably the same in DeKalb. I'm not quite sure what would be here. And also the elimination, and I love this, and all of you should love this, of that hated car tax. You know, on your birthday you have to renew that ad valorem tax. Well, that's proposed for elimination. And boy, as Republicans who hate taxes, we ought to be appreciative of that. So I think there's some good things that are going to come out in terms of tax reform. And it'll be something, again, you might want to ask your lawmakers. And I know you've got a special election to fill Dan Lackley's seat. He was a great patriot, a great conservative. I know we will miss him. But ask the candidates where they stand on holding the line on taxes and also cutting back on government. Some of you have heard me say there's 2 Republican parties in this state. There's a big government Republican Party, and there's a small government Republican Party. And you're going to have to decide which party you want to be a part of, and you're going to do that in your primaries and special elections. So again, it's up to you folks. It is up to you folks. There'll be probably also some reform in health care and in transportation. And I've always said this, the Republicans better be the leaders on fighting traffic congestion, because a centrist Democrat, and they'll lie, the Democrats will lie to you, I know you're shocked at that. The Democrat running for governor could say, look, the Republicans have done nothing on congestion, and I'll do something. But let's not get caught with that. So I'm urging all of our Republican lawmakers in the governor's office to do something. In fact, a great start would be, a great start would be get truck-only toll lanes, voluntary. At least get those big trucks away. And let's come out with some more detailed transportation plans for our growth. Let's talk about growth. What's fueling growth in this state? Illegal immigration. It's not the births of the native population, let me tell you that. And some of you, again, have heard me say this. Josh mentioned in the introduction that I'm the spokesman for a group, Americans for Immigration Control. It is a huge, huge threat to this country, to the United States of America.